Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Greetings, everybody, to this special edition of, I was going to say breaking history, but it's not breaking history. This is something kind of other. It's a trial. I've been making a lot of documentaries, as some of you know. My wife and I, we've got the bug, and we've found a couple of really good collaborators over the last couple of years that have helped us transform a lot of our writings and our research into multimedia productions, which I think is a very good, I was going to say, what do you want to call it? Like a healthy gateway drug. A lot of people don't have the mental stamina necessarily to read giant essays, especially in this culture. But I figured that the passion to read, to do the extra heavier lifting, needs to be stoked somehow. And documentaries, if they can be made beautiful, then you can pack in a lot of big ideas and maybe inspire people to want to do the deeper diving, to get the bigger lung power, to go into the depths and pull out those pearls that you can only find by going far down. And so it's been fun. It's been a fun voyage. And I pitched it to John after Gordon and I, in our last chat, briefly touched upon, in the last episode of Breaking History, we were briefly touching upon some of the developments around the Arctic and the importance of the Bering Strait as a strategic focal point that could feasibly change human history for many generations to come, and which many people don't know this, especially if you're somebody living in North America, especially if you're in Canada. This is not something that you're allowed to really be very passionate or connected to by virtue of the education system, which is designed to keep us in a very, very plebeian, disempowered mindset with no appreciation of what caused all of the major developments over the past hundreds of years, especially the last 150 years. So I'm going to say something a little bit about that. But this documentary, The Arctic Theater for War or Cooperation, was something we pulled together last year in order to really get across. You know, at this point, Biden was still in power. It really wasn't certain what the future would hold. But I've known that this is a very important, again, a very important strategic pivot. And if we are going to break free of this Malthusian cage that's been holding us in place in a closed system, the Arctic is one of the few weak spots that need to be hit at for the cage to break. So this documentary, it's about 36 minutes. It was I was happy to discover that it was recently accepted in a Russian film festival that will be taking place next week in Sochi. So I'll give people some feedback, hopefully from the ground in Sochi next week at some point. So there is a hunger for understanding what the hell is this Bering Strait project idea. Where did it come from? How did it influence the creation of Canada as we know it? Because there is a major fight. There was a major fight during the Civil War that was not simply located to the states of the Union, but had an international perspective over what the nature of humanity was going to be in the Arctic, and specifically Lincoln's proposal in Congress as an act passed and given full support by the Senate and the Congress in 1864 to extend telegraph lines and infrastructure through the Bering Strait with the planned purchase of Alaska by the Russians, who had at that time still owned it. That was something which caused many an evil oligarch to lose many a night's sleep. And the entire battle over what this North American region was going to be. Would it be a monarchy? Would Canada become a republic? Would it join the USA? That was all a big question mark. So we know in general terms where things derailed. And hopefully with the current discussion that's been taking place, especially in the wake of Kirill Dmitriev's release of a 350-page dossier about a month and a bit ago, with this dossier that pertains to the Soviet files pertaining to the murder of JFK. One of those important and very well circulated pages, it features, I'll just show it actually, I have it right here, an image of something I think most people here watching this live stream have already seen. It's essentially this This is one of the pages that says the Kennedy-Khrushchev World Peace Bridge could and should be built between Alaska and Russia at once. So how this drawing from an American civil engineer in 1962 found itself in the JFK files, I'm not too sure. But again, it did force some conversation to happen in an interesting way. So this documentary that we've done, I'm very proud of it. Cynthia, myself, Jason Dahl put an immense amount of effort, and I'm so happy that it's getting some traction in Russia. Earlier on this year, in January, it was featured on One American News on several installments, so that was also fun. And I'm hoping that more and more people can speak cogently about this very important project that could, again, reshape everything in very positive ways. I'm going to first read a couple of ads sponsored because today's show is a special. Was made possible by a few very important supporters of Badlands Media. I'm going to read those two ads before we get into anything. And also, I want people to think as they're watching this this film, to think about any questions you might have. I want this to have ideally a bit of engagement, so you can type in. I've got two screens in front of me. I usually don't do this. I usually don't pay attention to the Rumble chats because I'm not good at multitasking. But I don't have Gordon here. I'm solo, so I have to. So I'm going to try my best to keep my eyeballs at the chats. And if people do have questions or any thoughts to contribute after this film is finished, pop them there, and I'll do my best to treat that in any way I can. So before anything, let's quickly read the first of today's two ads, which is, here we go, SLNT. Let's see what SLNT Faraday is. Oh. Introducing SLNT. Empower your right to disconnect with SLNT Faraday cage bags. In a world where tech never sleeps, our mission is to keep you safe, private, and healthy. Our patented technology shields your devices from hacking, tracking, and EMF radiation, giving you autonomy over your digital life. Disconnecting sparks creativity, strengthens relationships, and brings peace of mind. With SLNT, you get effortless gear built with integrity, always staying one step ahead to protect your data and security. Choose SLNT and reclaim your freedom to disconnect. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/Faraday and use promo code Badlands to snag your 10% off discount. That's badlandsmedia.tv/Faraday, promo code Badlands. All right. That was the first. And the second is SD Tallow. Here we are.
Before skincare went synthetic, people used something simple, something real, tallow. Grass-fed and finished beef tallow is packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K. Nutrients your skin actually knows what to do with. It locks in moisture, restores elasticity, and defends against winter dryness. No water, no preservatives, and no BS. Unlike plant oils or chemical creams, tallow mimics your skin's own structure. Elbows, hands, knees, post-shave, anywhere your skin's crying for real moisture. Perfect for gifting or keeping your own skin soft when the cold hits. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off. Ancient care, modern truth.
Soft disclosure. Oh, that kind of cut off kind of abruptly, eh? Well, get your soft disclosure tallow today. That's the message. All right. So, without further ado, I'm not gonna yap on endlessly here. Let's just get the show on the road. I'm hoping that the stream. I've never streamed a full-length film before, so I'm really hoping that there's no tech issues. So this is gonna be it. Any final words? So like I said, yeah, think about questions. Think about also helping to circulate this if you're moved by what you're about to see. I'm going to have a link to the full documentary on Rumble that people can share with their friends, their family, and just broader social network. And otherwise, I hope you enjoy it. Today, the Arctic has increasingly become identified as a domain of potential great prosperity and cooperation amongst world civilizations on the one side, and a domain of violent confrontation and war on the other. Could the fate of nations hang on the future of this frozen frontier of the Earth? In 2024, Canada unveiled a new security doctrine calling for long-range missiles stationed in the Arctic. Canada is not alone in this Arctic defense upgrade, with a parallel $56 billion reform now underway in Norway, which recently had U.S. warships making their presence in Norway known for the first time in 65 years. The extension of a long-range missile shield into Canada's Arctic would extend an aggressive ballistic missile shield that has already been developed encircling Russia and China, accompanied by an expanded NATO alliance, which has grown from 15 to 31 member states since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Further, NATO military exercises in the Arctic have increased in intensity over the past year, justified by an apparently inevitable war with both Russia and China. But is this last great undeveloped frontier of the Earth destined to be a platform of war? Or is there another path available to us? In 2007, the Russian government first voiced its support for the construction of the Bering Strait rail tunnel connecting the Americas with the Eurasian continent. In 2011, the Russian government restated its pledge to build the $64 billion project. Sadly, on both accounts, its message was ignored. In 2014, China gave its support to the program for building railways and advanced new development corridors uniting the new and old worlds. In 2019, this vision took on the form of the Polar Silk Road, extending rail and ports in the Northwest Passage, which offers to cut over 10 days of travel time for goods between Europe and Asia. And in 2020, former President Donald Trump gave federal support for a long overdue Canada to Alaska rail connection as a driver for an Arctic development initiative. So yes, another paradigm does exist for this vast territory, rich in resources and potential for cooperation. But has this view of the Arctic emerged as if from a vacuum in recent years? Or does this positive vision represent a major theme shaping the last 180 years of recent history? To begin to answer this question, we will travel back in time to an incredible diplomatic maneuver that saw Alaska sold to the USA at the end of a bloody civil war. The sale of Alaska stands out as an incomprehensible historic anomaly for many who choose to see history merely as a sequence of linear events determined by practical decision-making. Why did it happen? What motives did Russia have for selling this vast expanse of territory, so rich in resources, to the United States? Most people have come to believe that Russia and the USA have always been natural enemies, and thus this question becomes additionally perplexing. However, the answer will astound you. The year was 1853, and the world was falling into chaos. The Ottoman Empire was slowly failing, Russia was sliding into war, and the USA was heading towards its own existential civil war. Unbeknownst to leaders of both countries, a grand trap had been set. Advisors dominating the government of Tsar Nicholas I promoted the belief that Russia could take territories from the weakening Ottomans and promoted a foolish policy of expansionism, not realizing that they were falling into a trap set by the British Empire, which would soon see Russia fall into a 3-year wasting war against an alliance of France, England, and the Ottomans. This became known as the Bloody Crimean War, running from October 1853 to February 1856. The war's outcome saw Russia humiliated, indebted, and crippled morally and physically. In response to this failure, a new breed of statecraft arose as an enlightened Tsar Alexander II took the reins and ended the Crimean War. With his leadership, statesmen such as his brother, Grand Duke Constantine, General Nikolai Muraviev, Foreign Minister Gorchakov, and the great Russian ambassador to America, Edward de Stoekel, gained a new level of influence, and a new foreign policy doctrine was created. This doctrine was exemplified by an enhanced appreciation of the destructive role of the British Empire's global strategy and the importance of America as a collaborator and partner to the Russians. In 1861, Tsar Alexander II and his brother quickly began tackling endemic corruption and worked to transform Russia by freeing the 25 million Russian serfs who had lived for generations as human cattle, earning him the namesake, the Great Liberator. This occurred only months before Abraham Lincoln was to earn the same title by announcing the Emancipation Proclamation, ending slavery in the USA. Despite the fact that neither man ever met each other in person, the US-Russia alliance that they established changed the world in ways that have still not come to be realized 170 years later. The British Empire was petrified that a Russian-American friendship would set into motion a great power alliance capable of undoing its global hegemony. Russia and the United States had already developed a historic bond with Tsarina Catherine the Great, leading the League of Armed Neutrality that guaranteed US victory against England in the 1776 Battle for Independence. And American engineers had helped to guide Russia's construction of its first rail lines connecting St. Petersburg to Moscow in the 1840s under the leadership of George Washington Whistler. One of the few means Britain had at this time to keep these two historic allies from uniting remained its territories of Canada and especially the colony of British Columbia. This colony was then an isolated and bankrupt outpost on the west coast, separated from Britain's other four colonies on the east by 3,000 kilometers of undeveloped wilderness, privately owned by the Hudson's Bay Company. For nearly 2 centuries, this private land was managed by Jesuits and Anglican agents of the Empire and intentionally kept the frontiers of North America unexplored, as Canada was expected to be nothing more than a land of furs without any industries or infrastructure. An economy made up of fur traders, hewers of wood, and drawers of water, but nothing more. The explosion of technological progress within the young republic made this agenda precarious, and pressures mounted as Canadians looked towards their southern cousins and also began to crave the fruits of modern progress. By the time of the Civil War, dynamics of technological growth on both major nations flanking Canada resulted in a trend that saw Britain's grip over its colonies slowly slipping. Before the Civil War in the USA had begun, Tsar Alexander II's brother and advisor, Grand Duke Constantine, wrote to Ambassador Edward de Stoekel, saying,
"The United States of North America should, in the course of events, be eager to conquer all of North America and will therefore meet us sooner or later. And there is not the slightest doubt that it will seize our colonies without great effort, and we shall be in a position to retain them."
As early as 1853, Russian statesman General Nikolai Muraviev had already promoted Russia's sale of Alaska to the USA in a letter to the Tsar, saying,
"Due to the present amazing development of railroads, the United States will soon spread over all North America. We must face the fact that we will have to cede our North American possessions to them."
By 1862, the Civil War had begun in full force, and with Britain's City of London and Foreign Office supporting the Confederacy, tides had quickly turned against Lincoln. The British possessions of Toronto and Montreal served as Confederate bases from which dozens of terrorist attacks were launched against Lincoln's Union from the north. As outlined in the 2017 book Montreal City of Secrets by Barry Sheehy, even Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth, was proven to have been in Canada for over 5 weeks prior to the murder, where he received payment, training, and directions from British-sponsored Confederates. Just as British-sponsored battles were being waged against the Union from the Southern slave power, in Canada, over 10,000 British troops were stationed with orders to prepare for a full invasion of the USA, while in Mexico, Napoleon III's forces were stationed under Emperor Maximilian, prepared to invade in support of the Confederacy from the south. As the world watched with bated breath, Ambassador Stoeckel wrote to Foreign Minister Gorchakov saying,
"The disintegration of the United States as a nation would, from our point of view, be something to be deplored. The American Confederation has acted as a counterpoise to British power, and in this sense, its continued existence constitutes an important element in the balance of power."
He continued that he desired
the preservation of the American Union as an indivisible nation.
Surely, the outcome of the Civil War would have been much darker had it not been for Tsar Alexander II's deployment of the Russian Navy to California and Atlantic coasts of America in 1863, which kept British and French forces from assisting the Confederacy in open warfare against Lincoln. Today, many Americans would be shocked to learn that Russian soldiers were celebrated by crowds of thousands in San Francisco and New York during the height of the Civil War. Later describing his motive for sending the naval fleets, Tsar Alexander II said,
"In the autumn of 1862, the governments of France and Great Britain proposed to Russia, in a formal but not in an official way, the joint recognition by European powers of the independence of the Confederate States of America. My immediate answer was, I will not cooperate in such action, and I will not acquiesce. On the contrary, I shall accept the recognition of the independence of the Confederate States by France and Great Britain as a casus belli for Russia. And in order that the governments of France and Great Britain may understand that this is no idle threat, I will send a Pacific fleet to San Francisco and an Atlantic fleet to New York. All this I did because of love for my own dear Russia. I acted thus because I understand that Russia would have a more serious task to perform if the American Republic, with advanced industrial development, were broken up, and Great Britain should be left in control of most branches of modern industrial development."
By December 26, 1864, as the outcome of the war in favor of the Union was blossoming, Secretary of State William Seward encouraged the Grand Duke Constantine to come to America with the following words:
"I think it would be beneficial to us, and by no means unprofitable to Russia. I forbear from specifying my reasons. They will readily occur to you, as they would to His Imperial Highness, if his thoughts were turned in that direction."
In 1866, Stoeckel was called back to Russia, and after a lengthy meeting with Tsar Alexander II, was given approval to initiate the sale of Alaska to America. On the evening of March 29, 1867, Ambassador Stoeckel delivered the news to William Seward at his private residence in Washington, D.C. When asked if Seward wished to convene a meeting the following day, the Secretary of State asked, why wait until tomorrow? What could be done this very evening? At midnight, the office of the State Department was opened with a select group of Senator Charles Sumner, William Seward, and a few trusted members from the Russian consulate alongside Stoeckel. As the sun rose on March 30th, The treaty was written, finalizing the sale for $7.2 million, and before the ink was dry, it was presented to a shocked Congress, who passed it in the following weeks. The strategic importance of this treaty was lost on no one. As discussions to extend railways from the USA into Russia via the Bering Strait was underway on both sides of the Atlantic, and just as Russian naval ships were arriving to the shores of the USA, both governments had given state support to the creation of a Russian-American telegraph line to be extended through the Bering Strait. In December 1864, Abraham Lincoln spoke of this plan to the U.S. Congress, saying,
"The proposed overland telegraph between America and Europe by way of Bering Strait and Asiatic Russia, which was sanctioned by Congress at the last session, has been undertaken under very favorable circumstances. Assurances have been received from most of the South American states of their high appreciation of the enterprise and their readiness to cooperate in constructing lines tributary to that world-encircling communication."
In order to prevent pro-American forces in Canada from declaring independence from a weakened empire, the 1867 British North America Act was signed establishing a North American monarchy antagonistic to U.S.-Russian cooperation for the next 160 years. The British hand behind the Civil War was exposed for all the world to see in the Alabama Claims of 1872, which was the world's first international trial, finding the British government guilty of militarily supporting the Confederacy. In recompense for this crime, Senator Sumner and Secretary of State Seward wanted the British to cede all of their remaining possessions in North America. Such an act would certainly have given great fuel to the extension of the transcontinental railway built between 1863 to 1869 through Canada and into Eurasia. But sadly, that would not come to pass. Desperate to keep its colony British Columbia from joining the USA, the British Foreign Office offered a bribe to its Pacific colony. A desperate Britain purchased the private Hudson Bay lands in 1870, canceled the colony's debts, promised to build a railroad from Ontario to the Pacific, connecting the isolated western colony with the eastern city centers of Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes. Russia had by this time positioned itself to begin construction of its own transcontinental railroad dubbed the Trans-Siberian Railway, with the help of American engineers. On its maiden voyage in 1905, the Trans-Siberian Rail saw Philadelphia-made Baldwin locomotives run across the Russian heartland, and it is no accident that all of the key players involved in the Alaska Purchase were also involved in the Russian Continental Railway program on both sides of the ocean. Abraham Lincoln's former bodyguard and first governor of Colorado, William Gilpin, was not least among this group. Gilpin had been known as one of the earliest champions of America's transcontinental railway from as early as 1846, and his hundreds of speeches, published maps, and writings went further than any other statesman of the day to concretize what those international public works would look like. Describing his grand design for international public works, Gilpin wrote in his widely read 1890 magnum opus, The Cosmopolitan Railway,
"Railways continue to extend themselves, soon to become a universal system over all the lands of the globe. We have seen the energies of the American people bringing into line and into use these new powers. Span the continent with the Pacific railways, they will continue to expand their works to Bering Straits, where all the continents are united. To prolong this unbroken line of cosmopolitan railways along the latitudinal plateau of Asia, to Moscow and to London, will not have long delay."
Within his 1890 book, Gilpin continuously emphasized his long-held belief that the inevitable awakening of China would be the basis for the renewal and salvation of the West.
"In Asia, a civilization resting on a basis of remote antiquity has had indeed a long pause, but a certain civilization, although hitherto hermetically sealed up from European influence, has continued to exist. This ancient Asiatic colossus in a certain sense, needed only to be awakened to new life, and European culture finds a basis there upon which it can build future reforms.
By 1906, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia began to support the plan for the American-Russian Bering Strait Tunnel, officially approving a team of American engineers to conduct a feasibility study. A New York Times article, dated March 27, 1906, titled, "For Bering Strait Tunnel, Tsar approves recommendations for all rail route to America." The article stated,
"The Tsar of Russia has issued an order authorizing the American syndicate to begin work on the Trans-Siberian Alaska Railroad project. The plan is to build a railroad from Siberia to Alaska by bridging and tunneling the Bering Strait. It is said that the enterprise will be capitalized at from $250 to $300 million, and that the money centers of Russia, France, and the United States will be asked to take bonds."
Sadly, instead of seeing a world embrace this vision for world cooperation, an age of assassinations and regime change was instead unleashed as the world slid chaotically into two world wars. Between 1880 and the start of World War I, dozens of leading statesmen who were supportive of global cooperation were killed by anarcho-terrorists, and in Russia, a foreign-directed revolution funded by London and Wall Street bankers ensured that the fragile Russian government would soon be toppled and the Romanovs murdered. Towards the end of World War II, the discussion of connecting the Bering Strait by roads and rail was again revived by American Vice President Henry Wallace, who described this post-war vision in a 1944 article titled "Two Peoples, One Friendship." In the article, Wallace wrote,
"Of all nations, Russia has the most powerful combination of a rapidly increasing population, great natural resources, and immediate expansion in technological skills. Siberia and China will furnish the greatest frontier of tomorrow." When Russia's Foreign Minister Molotov was in Washington in the spring of 1942, I spoke to him about the combined highway and airway which I hope someday will link Chicago and Moscow via Canada, Alaska, and Siberia. Molotov, after observing that no one nation could do this job by itself, said that he and I would live to see the day of its accomplishment. It would mean much to the peace of the future if there could be some tangible link of this sort between the pioneer spirit of our own West and the frontier spirit of the Russian East.
Despite small efforts to revive the vision for Arctic cooperation by Franklin Roosevelt and Wallace, the president's early death and the rise of the Cold War ensured that this vision would be set back for many years. Ultimately, the opening up of the Arctic as the new frontier of human development requires that Canada learn from Russia's plans to build 5 new advanced nuclear-powered cities, as outlined by former Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu in 2021. Shoigu's plans are informed by an earlier science city named Umka, which had been planned for Russia's high north and designed to provide comfortable housing for over 5,000 workers and their families. These workers would be engaged in both scientific as well as industrial work, as the Arctic Passage is quickly becoming an alternative to the Suez Canal, and will see a 5-fold increase of shipping traffic between Asia and Europe, according to current plans. Not only that, but the upgrade of the Trans-Siberian Railway and construction of a new high Arctic railway connecting a string of new ports will drive numerous leaps in engineering and interconnectivity. The attraction of providing long-term infrastructure to scientists is also inspired by the important study of cosmic radiation entering the Earth's atmosphere and biosphere from outer space. This phenomenon is sometimes known as the aurora borealis. Nowhere on Earth is this connection to the galaxy so apparent as it is in the Arctic, and nowhere could a greater array of discoveries into Earth science and even evolution itself be made than in the Arctic. The challenge of providing comfortable living standards amidst a harsh Arctic climate requires internal climate control, waste evaporation, internal agricultural capacities, and reliable energy, and as such, Russian designers of the Arctic cities have used the International Space Station as their model. This model city of the future echoes back to the planned domed city of Frobisher Bay in a territory that has come to be called Nunavut, which Canada's Prime Minister John Diefenbaker had committed to build as an integral component to his 1958 Northern Vision campaign. John Diefenbaker proclaimed this Northern Vision in 1958, saying,
"This national development policy will create a new sense of national purpose and national destiny. One Canada, wherein Canadians will have preserved to them the control of their own economic and political destiny. Sir John A. Macdonald gave his life to this party. He opened up the West. He saw Canada from east to west. I see a new Canada, a Canada of the North."
Frobisher Bay's design, as produced by the Department of Public Works, announced a domed city encircled by 12 large towers housing 4,500 workers and their families, connected by an underground network of tunnels. In order to ensure that the city were truly one of the future, recreation facilities, shopping centers, and other amenities were included to ensure that the comfort of Toronto would be something accessible even in the Arctic. Ultimately, Diefenbaker's Northern Vision, which incorporated a bold roads to resources and frontier science program, was to be funded by a rechartered Bank of Canada. Diefenbaker's brilliant financing approach took a page from Alexander Hamilton and Lincoln's greenback system, which involved public bonds issued by Canada's National Bank in order to connect both old maturing World War II victory bonds as well as new bonds directed towards Canada's development. Diefenbaker's vision for a true national credit system was encapsulated in his 1958 radio announcement.
"This, the largest financial project in our history, offers an opportunity to all holders of victory bonds which were purchased as an act of patriotic faith during the war years to reinvest them for the greater development of Greater Canada. These monies that were advanced during the days of war and which contributed to the victory, we now ask to be made available to speed the pace of peaceful progress and the program of national development. The action we are taking will make it possible for our nation to embark on a new era of peacetime prosperity, far and beyond anything we have ever known."
While this national credit and Northern Vision program was sabotaged by a coordinated operation from London, Diefenbaker's strategy is just as applicable today as it was in 1958. Today, the Frobisher Bay Plan remains the paragon of northern development and complements the multi-trillion-dollar Trans-Eurasian Belt Development Program, which former Russian Railways President Vladimir Yakunin described on March 23, 2015, must be
an interstate, inter-civilizational project. It should be an alternative to the current neoliberal model, which has caused a systemic crisis. The project should be turned into a world future zone, and it must be based on leading, not catching technologies.
Since Yakunin's remarks, President Putin has unveiled his Far East development plan as a 21st century national priority for Russia. The development of new cities, mining, transportation corridors, and oil and natural gas of Russia's Far East represent one of the greatest boons for economic investment during the coming century, and already features an array of partners from China, Japan, South Korea, India, and other APEC nations. In May 2016, the University of Calgary's School of Public Policy published a study by Andrei Suzenko and G. Kent Fellows called Planning for Infrastructure to Realize Canada's Potential, the Corridor Concept. This brilliant report outlined a vision for North American development not seen in over 60 years, as its authors wrote.
The Northern Corridor would be approximately 7,000 kilometers in length. It would largely follow the Boreal Forest in the northern part of the West, with a spur along the Mackenzie Valley, and then southeast from the Churchill area to northern Ontario and the Ring of Fire area. The corridor would then traverse northern Quebec to Labrador, with augmented ports. The right-of-way would have room for roads, rail lines, pipelines, and transmission lines, and would interconnect with the existing southern-focused transportation network.
This work inspired the establishment of a study commissioned by the Canadian Senate Committee on Banking, Trade and Commerce, chaired by David Tkachuk in 2017, which produced a policy document called National Corridor, Enhancing and Facilitating Commerce and Internal Trade.
A visionary, future-oriented infrastructure initiative, such as the proposed Northern Corridor, would give rise to significant economic opportunities for Canada and would play an important role in the development of Canada's northern regions. Because an initiative of this scale and scope would likely take decades to complete, the federal government, on a priority basis, should ensure that a feasibility study on the proposed Northern Corridor is undertaken.
Vladimir Putin's multiple proposals over the years that the USA and Canada join in cooperative Arctic development is important not only because it would build trust, create business opportunities, and re-establish the lost art of long-term thinking, but would also help link up Western businesses into partnership with the Asian Pacific development process now being shaped by China's Belt and Road Initiative. Today, Russia's Trans-Eurasian Belt development is fully integrated into China's One Belt, One Road program and provides a model upon which the Northern Vision can be reawoken, bringing Canada into alignment with the BRICS on Arctic development, space, and nuclear research. The Alaska-Canada Rail Corridor, last endorsed by President Donald Trump with support from the government of Alberta in 2020, with the construction of a development corridor extending 80 kilometers on each side of the railroad, the long overdue Alaska-Canada rail connection can positively transform the region and the peoples living there in its entirety. Power lines, new cities, fiber optic lines, and where necessary, fresh water pipes would be encased within the corridor. Cities, population centers, manufacturing, and scientific agriculture would be fertilized and harvested in this corridor as well. North America's abundant but largely untapped mineral and raw material resources would finally be made accessible by rail link and roads out of the frigid ground for rational use by humankind. The poverty-stricken regions of the world, sick of being exploited by empire and hungry for real development, would benefit immensely by such a new paradigm. As we look with hope towards a brighter future, let us be reminded of the words of Alaska's former governor, Walter Hickel, who had addressed a Moscow conference sponsored by Russia's Council for the Study of Productive Forces, when he said,
"As we look at the goals for the 21st century, it's fitting that we bring Russia and America together. There couldn't be a more important symbol. I have believed for many years that it will happen, and the place to start is the Bering Strait. Let's build a link between our two great nations, a tunnel to move people, resources, and goods east to west and west to east. The world's greatest reserves of natural resources await in Siberia, Alaska, and northern Canada. Let's build a rail connection to take that wealth to the world. Let's build a fiber optic cable link to improve world telecommunications. Let's build long-distance transmission lines to the 1.6 billion people on Earth who have no electricity. Show me any area in the world where there is a lack of energy, and I'll show you basic poverty. There is a direct tie-in between energy and poverty, energy and war, and energy. And peace, and peace, and peace, and peace, and peace, and peace, and peace.
All right. I don't know why my video is so small. There's probably something I'm doing wrong here. Nope, that's not it. I'm just pressing buttons right now to try to figure out how I can get my video. Hey, there we are. Hi. Hey, everybody. Well, that was it. Again, it was about 36 minutes. We packed a lot. It was a big challenge because the content was vast, but I think the gist was communicated. I'm just glancing over as I'm trying to, like I said, I'm trying to learn how to talk into the camera while at the same time looking over at the live chats. And hey, as I'm speaking, Team Smooth, thank you, Team Smooth, just kicked in a $7 tip for that film. That's very nice of you. Thank you so much. So yeah, this is definitely something very close to my heart. And as I put into the video, I don't know if people caught that, but at the very end, we chose to dedicate this to the memory of the late, great Lyndon LaRouche, who died back in 2019 at the ripe old age of like 98. And for those who don't know, this is how I originally encountered this project. It wasn't through the school system. It wasn't through any, mainstream channel that I became familiar with this program, but it was rather after I was kind of going crazy way back in 2005, 2006, when I was starting to learn how to wear my tinfoil hat and look at the world from a conspiratorial lens and trying to figure out, how the mind has been prohibited from actually thinking in a more healthy way. So that was my sort of learning curve. And I think, as everybody watching knows, it's a little bit messy and scary at first. Just sort of realizing that most people are conditioned by forces that they don't understand, that mean us very ill, that have very ill intentions. And so I was doing my best. But it was only upon encountering in 2006 in the summertime some representatives in Canada, which is where I live, where I was working, on a lunch break. There was a political table, and I started chatting with a representative. There was a small office of the LaRouche movement in Canada at the time. There was a very robust youth movement happening, and I was provoked into a conversation about trying to stop depopulation. And I figured that I knew quite a bit about the depopulation agenda and broader conspiracies, but I was provoked by the fact that I didn't have solutions. I had no idea what to do. I didn't even really sense that there was ever anything that could be done. And so that impotent mode of thinking was put into was brought to my attention, just how weak my knowledge really was, with the idea that I was challenged with, which is that if knowledge is true, it should come with power to do something with knowledge. If something I'm calling knowledge is accompanied by a lack of power or a diminution of my power to solve problems, it may not actually be knowledge. There might be truthful facts that I was holding, but it couldn't be truly knowledge if knowledge truly is power, and if power also is comes with responsibility. So it was a good, healthy form of discomfort that I was challenged with. And one of the ideas that was presented to me as far as things that could be done was this diagram of the Bering Strait Rail. This is 2006. And there were a number of younger members who were telling me that they were actually lobbying in the Canadian Parliament, in the Senate, in the Parliament buildings, and amongst the embassy corps, getting meetings, providing political briefings, and trying to really get across to Canadian representatives that there is this opportunity to do something to avoid a complete breakdown of the system that would involve a destruction of the lives of countless millions of people, of unwitting civilians. And so, I decided to say, okay, I'll go along with that. I'll help. And I volunteered for about a decade, and really became quite passionate, giving seminars, briefings, workshops on the topic of the Bering Strait, on Arctic development. And we had some very fun seminars, even in Ottawa, that brought together many representatives from embassies and others who were very curious about this idea, and then to discover that is actually how to explain why Canada is a monarchy, why we didn't become a republic. That was extremely useful, that master key was provided that allowed for the resolution of things that are never treated, even today, in any history book. It's really, people are shown countries with borders as they are today, and there's no real sense of the fight, of the drama that did allow for those countries to grow, to change those boundaries. The U.S. was once just 13 colonies, not that long ago, and as people saw in that documentary, Canada, whatever the hell that was just maybe 12-13% of the total surface area of what it is known to be today. Well, that was very small, with 4 separate colonies, 4 on the East Coast, 1 separated way over British Columbia on the West Coast, and private Hudson Bay land, and an appendage of the British East India Company, occupying the vast majority of that land, a privately owned company that had been set up in 1670 called Rupert's Land. And that was the case up until 1869. That was really the case. And the race to over the West was really everything. And whether or not the US and Russia were going to hold hands again and really consolidate their friendship as an old and a new country that had common principles, and whether Canada was going to be brought into that fold, whether China, people forget also that China at that time was playing a very important part of this story. They were suffering their own British-directed civil war. It wasn't just America, but in that period of the 1857 to 1860s period, China had its own civil war that had Anglo-American intelligence agents organize what's called the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom Rebellion, while the Second Opium War was being waged by the British officially against the Chinese, because they were trying to stop the flooding of their country with British-controlled opium from India. So that was a big thing. And there were many people those who emerged to power in 1894, 1895, around the 100 Days Reform, who really wanted to have a major modernization, industrial revival of China, to break free of feudalism and it was never really feudal, but to break free of the archaic system of just not having industrial progress, basically. That was attempted, and there was many allies to that cause in America, in Russia, and unfortunately that was short-lived. And it took somebody like a Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the first president of the Republic of China in 1911, who was organizing for the Republican Revolution to occur in Colorado, the same Colorado that Governor William Gilpin made his heart and passion as the zone that would feasibly be a place for great development. Unfortunately, Gilpin was ousted. He did, that's the figure who people saw in this documentary, the guy who formulated, who was Lincoln's bodyguard, the first governor who formulated the Cosmopolitan Railway in 1890. So he had a whole program to do that, but it was in that area. Unfortunately, today Colorado has fallen quite far and has become a bit of a satanic hub different cults, which is something that has to be dealt with over the coming years ahead. But point being was it had a different character 150 years ago. And it was in that very place that Sun Yat-sen was organizing when he got word that the Republican Revolution toppling the hereditary monarchy was successful and went back to become the first president. And he made the point that China would have to, if it was going to survive, emulate the best, and not the worst, but the best examples of what America was under Lincoln, under Hamilton, who he cites extensively in his 3 Principles of the People, an important series of lectures that he turned into a book before he died, which outlines the importance of applying a protective tariff, rejecting British free trade, rejecting Marxism, but also rejecting Adam Smith and British free market liberalism. So he wasn't playing this controlled opposition game of, are you a Marxist commie, or are you a liberal, capitalist loving freedom lover? Pick one, pick a side. And it's like, no, he knew he was too smart to play that game, and he knew that was a controlled dialectic. And in his book, he goes at length about the importance of applying the true American system of political economy to China, which again had people like Sergei Witte, who was trying very hard to bring the Bering Strait rail into being, and who had an insight into extending that rail with the help of McKinley, William McKinley, who resisted taking concessions after the uprising in China in 1898, which saw a major rebellion against foreign powers that had occupied China. And unfortunately, this was a very anarchistic rebellion in so many ways, without much of a plan. Some foreigners died, and as a response, this is the Boxer Rebellion, of course, I'm speaking about. And as a response, China was brutalized even further than they had been already under the Civil War that the British had organized, and under the 2 Opium Wars that saw them just carved up and turned into a third world country. And America was uniquely alone in saying that they did not want to, under McKinley, take part in this imperial subversion and carving up of China. Witte and McKinley both had plans with some allies in France to extend that credit into helping China really industrialize. Sun Yat-sen wanted to revive it. Of course, history is tragedy. History is, you learn a lot by looking at it from the standpoint of recognizing the tragic drama of where great ideas were sabotaged, where people who had greater responsibilities failed to take hold of them. And instead, something much worse and unnecessary ended up happening, a la Hamlet, who chose not to be. So now I'm going to glance over at the chat and see if there's anything of relevance that I might have missed from those who are written a couple of comments. Thank you, Earth Tribes Love. I very much appreciate that. Vrooman says that, but the rare earth minerals are there in the north and the corridor that provides direct transportation. Am I catching the purpose correctly? Well, there's many purposes. Of course, the rare earths are one of many reasons. There are incredibly abundant resources all over the Canadian Arctic that boggles the mind. Not just rare earths, uranium. I mean, you've got precious metals, but that's less important. You've got very valuable industrial resources on top of the natural gas and the oil deposits. The iron deposits are extremely high quality. The problem, once again, for the most part, is just the complete lack of any roads or rail. So you can't get them. They're not really a resource. They're just sitting in the ground because there's no way of accessing the vast majority. So it requires some form of a plan. It requires also some understanding of the means to actualize said plan. Having a great idea is great, but if you don't have an understanding of how this sort of thing has been built in the past successfully, you don't really know what tools we have available today. So that's another aspect of it as well. But I would say even more important than the materialistic aspects of it is the cultural and spiritual aspects of building something big that transcends our individual concerns and lifespans even, and even our current competencies and knowledge. So that's always what you want to do is, it's an important oft-quoted but important quote from the Bible that where there is no vision, the people perish. And that's, I think, because when you have a proper grounded vision, a grounded meaning that it satisfies both a necessary need for the human condition, but at the same time is possible. So it is both possible and necessary, not one or the other, but both. Then you challenge people to reprioritize in a way that they wouldn't be able to do if they were living either under a slave master society of decadence for the masters and a brutalization for the slaves, or simply a consumer-based society of people with no future, no vision, not building anything for the future, and thus all of the job opportunities that are there in said society that is stagnating, decaying, are really jobs that are not based upon anything that challenges us to be better than we are. If anything, most people will hate their jobs in said services economy by and large, not all, but by and large, because the jobs are not associated with something that is purposeful, that can have you take pride in the work that you do, that you know that when you leave that job and you go home to your family, that you've truly done something good for the nation, for your family, for the species as a whole. So there's, I think, a spiritual development that happens and an intellectual yearning for excellence when you have that type of identity and that type of spirit animating a society, like we did at different moments under things like the New Deal, the period of the great infrastructure projects that were launched in the 30s in a big way. That saw, again, the reprioritization of all of our talents, of our priorities. We saw the same thing with the insights of John F. Kennedy and his approach to continental water development, of space development, which again really challenged us to go outside of our comfort zone and not just live within the comfort blanket of where we're at, but to always be unsatisfied with where we are, so that we will always want to think about making things better for the next generation. And to the degree that you have that in any amplitude within a society, I think that you've got a society that is morally fit to survive. When you lose that, it gets bad. It gets really bad. And it could get so bad that the system tanks. And when that happens, we have some examples throughout history of morally decadent societies that lost their culture, that forgot the wisdom that they once had, that unfortunately did not get their heads out of their asses in time to change the consequences of that shitstorm, and saw major collapses into very bad periods, little dark ages, big dark ages. Those do happen, and they happen for lawful reasons. It's not like God is just built something to periodically watch us suffer every now and again. That's not why it happened. God created the universe good, created us good, but with responsibilities to walk in alignment with natural law. And when we don't, when we choose to do something and normalize stupidity, normalize mediocrity, normalize selfishness, well, there will be consequences to pay. You can't ignore the laws of the universe indefinitely. They will be tolerated. Bad behavior will be tolerated, but it will not necessarily be tolerated indefinitely. And it becomes harder to repair the longer it is tolerated without addressing the real systemic, moral, intellectual issues that caused us to come into a crisis. And it's been a long time. Well, JFK died now a long time ago. And so relatively, but I mean, this has been several generations of a general downward orientation. So it's going to be that much more work to build our way out of that in a manner that is really not gonna, I mean, again, it could get very bad. So let me look back here at the comments. I noticed that there was something to do with a bit of a poo-pooing comment as well. Fat cats arranging deals. Well, the people are left with nothing, and big projects allow for big graft. Dome City would surely fit the deep state mold, says, please repeat. Okay, thank you. Please repeat for that very, very sour comment. That's, I got to say, a very uninspired comment, but something I've heard before. And it's true. Where you have big projects, there's more opportunities for corruption. That's true. If you have more affluence, there's more opportunities for people to be corrupt within that affluent society. That is true. So then your choice is, well, maybe let's just live in poverty and scarcity where there's fewer opportunities for big corruption. Okay, you could try that. Or you could try to be a moral person and enforce a moral culture that does not make people, bring out their inner beast and live like little selfish animals. Instead, think of themselves as something much more dignified. That's, I think, a preferable orientation than the happy, let's just have little corruption with massive poverty instead. So that's my take. All right, so let me just scan through here to see if I'm missing anything thus far. Yeah, slaves no more resets, slavers going down. Okay, sure. Global Military Alliance. Okay, I don't know. I mean, these are a lot of things that I do hope that there's some healthy coordination going on right now. Definitely, I'm seeing a lot of evidence that there's a lot of good coordination happening. There's also a lot of bad things that cause my mind to always be a little bit concerned by transhumanists and Satanists that have influenced military operations, especially in America. So that's always a concern that I have. We'll see. Rather undignified, this jumping all around the screen. That was great. Rather undignified, this jumping all around the screen. I'm not too sure what that means. Okay, let's look at another message here from Team Smooth. Perhaps transportation by air and sea are currently limited in size, mixed content, speed, and energy combinations compared to land by rail. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the advantage of rail, is that sea-based transport, it's good. Air-based transport is good, but air-based for freight, if you want to bring, that's not so useful. That's limited. Air for travel of passengers is really good, much better than sea, obviously, but for freight, not so much. For sea, it's also pretty slow. And I think the other thing is that it's sea-based freight transportation has the limitation that it doesn't open up the door for greater technological progress in that field of shipping per se. You can always get better, but at a much, much slower rate when you're dealing with ships. There's only so much speed a ship can go from a purely scientific standpoint. There is. It's only so big a ship can become. They can get really big, really, really big, but still there's a limit. Rail, however, does not have those same kinds of limits to potential, and potential is really much more real than the physical sort of reality in some interesting manner. Potential is where there's the space for creativity to live and breathe. Now with rail, you can have modern, different, advanced electrified rail is a nice thing to have. Of course, much of the rail that we have in North America is utilizing 1960s, 1970s technology. It's pretty obsolete. But you can have high speed. China, for example, is 40,000 kilometers. I'm not sure how many miles that is, but maybe 28,000 miles of high-speed rail. That's rail that can go anywhere between 300 and 480 miles per hour, which is significant. Much of it is used for passengers, but again, there's so much, it's so abundant. They've been able to excel at building this type of rail that it's very cheap. But not only that, it opens up the door once you have that expertise that you've built up in the industrial capacity by building all of the parts. And the automation that goes with the application of AI for managing very complex systems is very important, especially when you have a lot of rail. But all of a sudden, now that it gets you even closer to magnetic levitation rail, which is a technology that was innovated and developed by the Germans, but the Germans don't have any of it because they've been run by a death cult now for quite some time. So the Chinese do, though. They actually said, well, let's apply it. Let's do it and even make it better. And they did. So now they are the only country in the entire God's created earth that has magnetic levitation railway. And they've got 5 different projects to build 5 different magnetic levitation railway systems, which brings us into a new domain of speed, of efficiency, of lack of friction. And there's ways as well with maglev rail to apply it for development of things like the Arctic, which freezes quite a lot. And again, we're still a ways away from that, but that's the orientation, because now what you can have are heated tracks. The rail itself is not even necessarily touching the like the train is not even touching the I don't know, what do you even call this? The superconducting magnetic field upon which it hovers and it moves. And so you can have the melt off, the ice melt off. You can have the thing go quite fast in very interesting terrains, including on the moon. If you're actually going to have the capabilities that we develop that would have application on other celestial bodies like the moon, or in the future, probably well after I'm dead. But still, you want to think in these terms on Mars, maybe other planets. Having the transportation of magnetic levitation would be the way to go. You wouldn't be able to do it with even high-speed rail. You would really want something like that. So these are all the things that open up that you don't have with shipping. With air travel, there's certainly a lot we can do. I know the Chinese even have developed prototypes for flying taxis. That's interesting. But, we also once had, in some ways, more advanced technology. Canada had the first supersonic airplanes in the world. That was Canada coming out of World War II. And the very same Malthusians that John Diefenbaker, who was featured in today's documentary, that he was trying to fight, but he didn't fully understand, they ended up taking advantage and gaining a massive amount of influence, which resulted in the Avro Aero programs being canceled and then cut up in scrap. So the existent supersonic airplanes that Canada had built up were all chopped up into scrap metal, and the one surviving prototype that we still have was dropped into the bottom of one of the Great Lakes, and it was only recently recovered in a museum now. So we lost that technology, and it took the French in the 1970s to finally come back and finally bring that technology back online. And it lasted for a while with their Concorde jets that could travel from England to New York in 2 hours. We had that. There was about 90 in their fleet, but they didn't maintain them. They didn't do much to continue to develop that technology. It sort of was much like the space program. It was a certain stagnation was imposed on it from above. And at a certain point, possibly sabotage. Maybe they were just dysfunctional as it was from lack of maintenance. But one of them ended up crashing and killing everyone on board in 2002. And they just decided to take that opportunity, like the Germans did with their Mag-11 in 2001 or so, and just cancel the entire supersonic passenger plane program. And today we have none. There's discussions from some companies to do it again, but not yet. So that's, these are opportunities for growth for sure. But definitely rail is where the nation building comes in. And that was understood much more in the 19th century all around the world than it is today. We've really lost a sense of the power of and the purpose of rail to actualize and create potential. And it's, we got addicted to highways with trucks all over the place, and truckers being forced to not see their families for days and weeks on end and drive for 18 hours, being forced to get on addictive and damaging energy drinks and drugs just to stay awake. So that's what we have instead. And that's why we destroyed a lot of the rail we once had. We once had much more rail than we do today. And it has a lot to do with this change in paradigm around going for automobiles and roads, which are fine by themselves, but not to the expense of the future of a society. And we made that mistake. So that's going to involve a little bit of recalibrating. Let me look once again now at the comment section. We got a few more minutes still to go, where I can scan through comments. Somebody named Patrick says, Matt, the video had a little bit of a chop to it with the little blur a couple times. Yeah, that was because I think the StreamYard, I was streaming it through StreamYard. If you go to the Rumble, the actual Rumble channel that's in the chat box below, or I'll put it in the comment section below this video, you will be able to watch it with no choppiness. So I do apologize for that. So somebody says a new domain, Flying Axe Blade, a new domain of not being owned by the Rothschilds, not insignificant rival. That's true. So somebody, Claire Cat, had a couple of clients who traveled regularly on the Concorde. Yeah, I've met a few people who used to use these things all the time, and it's sad. I mean, having to fly 6-7 hours in a plane now when you could just get across the ocean in 2 hours if you really wanted to, that's painful. That's because of oil companies and the speed. Yep, that's true. Just still scanning through. So Q-Puncturist says, so much great information. Going to watch again at normal speed. Yep, that's always a good idea. Thank you for working the brain. No problem. All right. And I'm just scanning through, but I think Trump seems dedicated to an alliance for peace that would encompass this kind of project. I hope so. It does seem like that's where things are going. Definitely. My concern right now is obviously Mark Carney, and Canada is playing its unfortunate historic role as a troublemaker. Carney has said already on a few occasions, but when I made this documentary, Justin Trudeau was still the prime minister. Now it's Mark Carney, and he's explicitly stated that he would not allow for any type of economic cooperation on the Arctic to take place under his watch. However, at the same time, he's also said that he's in favor of increasing the militarization of the Arctic. So that's a problem. Also, additionally, Carney's on a charm offensive with China. So that's, I think, a danger to China. A lot of Canadians are being brainwashed by their intelligence agencies to believe that that's China out to get Canada, and a proof that China has been the evil Chi-Coms have been controlling Canada. And look, they're taking over, or they're going to take over with their stooge, their puppet, Mark Carney. And that's the kind of messaging you're getting that's catered to the conservative psychological profile. It's ubiquitous in Canada. It's kind of gross. Because it completely ignores the British Empire, the financier oligarchy of the City of London, of the CIA, CSIS operations that have done so much damage, that destroyed China even several times over, that brought them into a slave society after opium wars and being carved up by imperial forces abroad. And it ignores all of that. It ignores the fact that China was a third world country in the 1960s. And instead treats that as the convenient boogeyman to organize and unite us around fear. And all that to say, Carney's, I think one of his jobs is to try to loosen up the Russia-China alliance by trying to tell the Chinese, hey, look, we're being bullied by big bad America. They want to take us over as the 51st state. We feel you, and we know you're being bullied too with U.S. military operations on your perimeter. We're all in it together. And so they're trying to, I think, seduce China into thinking that they could trust Canada all of a sudden. They couldn't trust Canada under Harper or Justin Trudeau, but now all of a sudden it's a new thing. And so it's a trap to, I think, again, weaken the China-Russia alliance, also get China in a position of dependency on Canadian resources, at which point, once they're dependent, they can be the taps can be turned off at the leisure of the British Empire that still controls Canada like a colony. So that's an issue. And it's one that I'm really hoping the Chinese are much more smart than falling in said trap, and instead go with any type of opportunity to have this Russia-China-US alliance. Again, what role Canada's going to play, I don't know. Perhaps here the question of Alberta separatism plays a much more strategic role on the global stage, since the most obvious pathway for developing that rail and that connection between the lower 48 states and Alaska would be through Alberta. What that means for the Yukon, I'm not too sure, because you do kind of get a little bit of the Yukon that would have to get in on that, and I'm not too sure what form that would take. But the Western Republic, or I'll call them the Western independent Canadians, independence-minded Canadians, can definitely work with this orientation quite well. Canada is run by morons. Good luck with them. Yeah, I noticed that. Demons among us. Eric Freeman says, this is fantastic. I think this is fantastic. The possibilities such a project would open for human development are incredible to imagine. I concur. Carney is the worst kind of venal, evil globalist. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Pretty bad, yeah. If the sovereign alliance of the three is actual and determined, Carney will fail. I tend to agree. I tend to agree with that. Could the Canadian people shed the crown? How long would it take? That would take a while. There's a lot of brainwashing. The zeitgeist is it's deep seated, especially on the East Coast. So where you have Ontario. I mean, Quebec doesn't care about the crown, but Quebec is their own cultural problems that have been created by their enemies. So there's definitely, I think, the greatest desire to be free from Alberta, from areas of British Columbia which are outside of Vancouver and Victoria Island. Saskatchewan has a certain healthy, robust, blue-collar farming morality and ethos that I think could also play a positive role. Manitoba is full of social engineers, drugs, and Satanists managing the shit show from above, but there's a lot of really good people as well. So maybe there's something there. But it would take some time to heal over years and generations of misinformation and brainwashing. This is a hypnotic trance that people, especially Americans, don't understand. The type of hypnotic inductions and conditioning that's been baked into the Canadian psyche. We sound a lot like Americans. I'm sure people have noticed. We look and sound a lot like Americans. Our money is kind of, with quarters and dimes and nickels are the same size and watch the same TV shows. A lot of similarities, but there's something psychospiritually off. And it's only when you look at this history from this new lens that you can start getting an appreciation for a lot of that. What do you got here? I got time for a couple more questions here that I'm just scanning through. The Crown is in a big mess. Yeah, that's true. That's what happens when you normalize pedophilia amongst elite classes. Things get messier and messier. And, I know they're trying to do a little bit of a rebranding to try to act like they're cleaning up their act. I think it's a lot of this is for show. Great work. Neo Tribal says, great work, Matt. Love your way of explaining history in a way that even I can comprehend. Thank you for your great research and dedication. I always love your contributions. Thank you, Neo Tribal. And they got some happy agreements with that comment. That's always cool. I'm a Canadian national treasure. That's so nice. Yeah, thank you. Okay, cool. Well, guys, all right. I know we got other shows. I think Gordon's going to be doing a show after this at 7:30 here on this channel. So I should probably make a little bit of space for Gordon. What I will be doing, like I said, I want to encourage people, go to the comment section, which I'm about to put it. I didn't put it in yet, but I will. The link to the Rumble video, the full-length film, is there on Rumble as a standalone with no glitches, bumps, or nothing, that people could watch again and share and take notes and other things. Additionally, the book series, if people want to really, really understand this and own this history, the book series the Clash of the Two Americas, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4, as well as the Untold History of Canada, that I put together over many years, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4, are great resources. We're trying to use that to inspire homeschoolers. I wrote the Clash of the Two Americas with my wife, Cynthia Chung, who's herself an amazing researcher and was invaluable in a lot of that research. So we're trying to help homeschoolers. We're trying to help citizens become more adept at understanding the contours of what are the historical currents that have shaped their past so that they can better influence their future. I'll make those books available. They're on Amazon as paperbacks, as Kindles, as PDFs. If people want a signed copy, I think our postal service is not on strike anymore, so you can send me an email through the CanadianPatriot.org website, and I can help, I can explain how you can get some signed copies from myself and Cynthia's hand mailed to your door. It's also an option. But definitely the videos. And, we are doing a fundraiser as well. So we're trying to raise money to help do more videos, because these things are huge, huge undertakings. Each one, we've done about 12 full-length feature films. So for maybe actually more than that over the last 3 years. And we're going to be doing more. So we're also doing, fundraisers. We're always happy to get people to want to help by kicking in, and we put that to work. And the last thing, on Friday, for those who don't know, we've been working on, with our friend David Gosselin, a poet and filmmaker, a collaborator of ours. We've been working on a film on Edgar Allan Poe. So we're going to get into the cultural warfare fight. We wanted to originally release this for Halloween, but we didn't find that the film was as ready as it needed to be. So the release date is going to be Thursday. This coming Thursday, the 6th of November at 7 p.m., we're going to do a film screening premiere, not dissimilar to what we're doing now. For those who have a ticket, they will receive a Zoom invite. These tickets are like $5 on Eventbrite. I'll make that also a link available in the comment section, or become a paid subscriber to Cynthia or my Substacks. You could do that too. And you'll get the Zoom invite that way. And that way you can come on, have a dialogue with myself, Cynthia, David, before and after the screening. It's a 2-hour, no, not 2 hours. It's a 1.5 hour full-length documentary on the real cause. Who murdered Edgar Allan Poe and why? What is the Edgar Allan Poe's final mystery? And this is going to take us into a tale of the occult penetration of America, a lot of very, very strange deep state operations that Poe was actually at war with to preserve the better heritage and potential of America, and a lot more that will blow your mind. It'll deal with witchcraft, Templar, occult, secret societies, and a lot more. So that'll be, like I said, Thursday, 7 p.m. I'm going to put all of that in the next 5 minutes in the comment section. Hope to see as many of you there as possible. I'm just getting through here. Ghost isn't having a show tonight because family's sick. Oh, damn, I didn't know that. Well, I gotta send him a little message. I had no idea. Still reading Clash of the Two Americas. Content's heavy, bit challenging. Yeah, that's the way. But I'm glad you're pushing through it. That's great. Appreciate that. And background music. Well, you know, it's a documentary. You gotta have background music for the documentary. It's a different kind of way of doing information. So, meh. If you like to read more, that's okay, and that's going to be in the books. So everybody, thank you for taking this Monday night with me. I appreciated this, and we might do this more often and do like occasional screenings of my documentaries with little dialogues in the weeks ahead. So till next time, I'll see if there's this outro video. I don't know where it is. No, there's no. I think there is an outro video somewhere here. I should really find it. I'm just going off the cuff here because I'm using a new link. And I don't... Yeah, there it is. I got it. Okay, outro video time. Okay, bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.